Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest in a series of Here for Business webinars from the Growth Company and the Business Growth Hub. We're here today to look at the return to work focus that has been discussed over the last week or so, but particularly looking at offices and contact centres. My name is Ian MacArthur, and I'm head of the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter, and I'm delighted today to be joined by in no particular order, Dave Harrison, who's the Operations Director for the Centre of Assessment. Hi, Dave.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Jane Thomas, who's the Managing Director for Call Northwest. Hi, Jane.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Alexandra King, Partnership Director of Cityco. Alex, to our friend, I think. Hi, Alex.
Hi.
And also Adam Pennington, Senior Associate Solicitor at Stevenson's. Hi, Adam.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Hi. So look, before I invite our colleagues to give you some advice and the views on the current challenges, I think it's just worthwhile reflecting that it is only a week ago that the government issued guidance on working safely during COVID to remain for offices and contact centres, as well as, I think it was 7 other pieces of guidance looking at various settings. And of course, whilst they were publishing guidance about how you go back to work, the first key message was stay at home and remain stay at home. So if you can work from home, that's what you're supposed to do. The second piece was, if you are in workplace, then you need to conduct a risk assessment that is perhaps something you would have done anyway in your workplace, but with a particular view towards risks associated with COVID. To co-produce that with your employees, but also to publish it if you employ over 50 employees. Next step was about social distancing, and if you can't social distance, then think about how you control transmission through various physical or work patterns. And of course, emphasising cleaning and hygiene. So the guidance that's gone out has focused on those 5 areas. But at the heart of it lies a dilemma, really, because we all want to see a vibrant city centre again. We all want to see our towns buzzing. We want to see a reimagined economy, but we can't have that without people. And transport challenges aside, and we may come to transport as a key issue around this debate, people, workers, shoppers, visitors, they all want to feel confident and assured that where they're visiting, it's a safe place to be right now. They want to understand that their workplace is safe, that the bar that they go to for a drink after work is a safe place, that the shop they pop into at lunchtime is a safe place. So I hope from our colleagues today, we'll be able to provide some insight into the challenges ahead and perhaps how you can prepare for the time when the lockdown is released. And Alex, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay. Obviously, at Cityco, you're very close to what's happening within the city centre. And could you just give us some feedback about what the feeling is of the businesses and the colleagues and the organisations you're working with? And maybe some of the plans for reopening, if they have them.
Thanks, Ian. Yes, thanks for inviting me today. I don't know if everybody's aware of our organisation. So we're Cityco, we're the City Centre Management Company, cross-sector membership organisation with our partners at the City Council, both Manchester and Salford, as well as GMCA, the Emergency Services third sector. And we also deliver the Business Improvement District for Manchester, which is primarily retail, but also includes banks, daytime dining, so restaurants like McDonald's, Cafe Nero, etc., etc. We've been constantly in contact with all of our members and helping support them because, you know, to refer back to the information that came out from government last week and the daily guidance that we're all getting, I'm sure we're all getting our inboxes overflowing with gov.com emails. It's very broad brush, and what we are able to do is to be very site specific for our cities, Manchester and Salford, and help our members really drill down to some of the detail. It's a mixed picture, feedback and sector-wise. Obviously, we've got a big vibrant nighttime economy in the city centre. That is the hardest hit. The events industry has come to a halt. So we've been working very closely with our small independents to see how well they can be supported, but also to help them bounce ideas around about if they do reopen, how are they going to do it? What are the opportunities within their existing licence? So we're working very closely with the licensing authority at Manchester City Council. It's been great. What they can't do, I mean, literally businesses that rely on touring or touring artists, obviously nobody's touring at the moment. So are you going to completely diversify your offer or what? So, those conversations are many and ongoing. And of course, a good balanced city centre, we've got our small independents and our creatives, but we've also got our big boys. So we've got our corporates who are well advanced with their reopening plans, leading the charge, people like Marks and Spencer's, Selfridges, and some of the hotels, some of which have stayed open to accommodate some of our emergency services staff and some of our vulnerable people. So what we really do is we review as many plans as we can, layer them over to our specific city centre needs and try and fill the gaps and try and help, but also share innovation. And it's really great to see how many people in the city centre, and certainly through some of our briefings and some platforms like this, people are willing to share the good ideas that they've had in order to enable social distancing, changes in work patterns, accommodate people who may be shielding or maybe just generally very nervous about coming back to work because they feel very frightened, but also looking at the next 6 months, because I think even though it's been very anxiety ridden this last couple of weeks, when we go into bleak midwinter, it's going to be a lot different picture for a lot of people. Using public transport might be avoided easily at this time of year for some people within a sort of 40-minute walk of the city centre or a ride from the city centre. That's going to be a very different picture in November when it's raining and cold and dark and so on. So we're looking at the immediate plans. CityCo represents a lot of businesses with some small working groups about reopening daytime and nighttime. So we're working with City Council on the public realm team, the highways team. You would have seen the closure of Deansgate temporarily, but obviously that's potentially something that we can do permanently. And that is supporting our businesses with their social distancing plans and so on. So it's a mixed picture. There's lots and lots of tech innovation out there as well, which I'm sort of slowly getting my head around. I'm a bit of a Luddite, I'm afraid. I like to see a sign and a bit of hazard tape, but there are a lot more technical solutions out there. So we're continuing to hold as many seminars and one-to-one question and answer sessions. We don't have all the answers, but what we do have is a really strong network where people are willing to share their solutions, which is really, really encouraging. That's the view from me, Ian. Oh, you're muted.
I'm following the instructions. I'm muting when I'm not when I'm listening. Thanks, Alex. That was a really good overview. Interesting to particularly pick up on the mix, I think, in the city centre. I mean, often we don't see it, as apparent, but there is a real granularity of mix of different types of businesses in the city centre. And I think hopefully they are all sharing good practice and thoughts about how they come back, because that will be vital for a vibrant city centre to continue that. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about particularly the public realm and how we're going to move around in the city. Hopefully they'll come. Jane, can I come to you now? The contact centre sector, as you corrected me earlier, because I called it the call centre sector, must have lots of challenges through this time. I think for anyone that's tried to contact a contact centre at the moment, I think we've all been patient, understanding that staffing levels aren't what they have been in the past. And I know myself, rather than speaking to someone, I've gone on to chat mode just to get things done. So it'd be really interesting to hear your insights, and then maybe about your members' thoughts about how they can return to something that resembles normality.
Yeah, perfect. Well, hello, everybody. Good to be with you this afternoon. I'm Jane Thomas. I'm Managing Director of Call Northwest, and I also am Managing Director of the Southwest Contact Centre Forum. So I have a good feel and a panacea of countrywide, really, around the contact centre industry. And to put that into context for you, we have around 700 contact centres in the Northwest. So an area of great significance in terms of an industry, because you'll all be aware that the contact centre is an industry that goes over many and services many vertical markets. So yeah, we've had a very interesting time. I'd like to bring the positivity that we felt to the table this afternoon, and that is, as you'll be aware of the perception around contact centres, it's had its challenges for whatever reason around employment, service levels, and what this particular pandemic has done, and we've seen through our members, is very much put to the heart of communication back into the contact centres. So it's been excellent news for the contact centre industry at large, with a lot of offshore contact centres. You'll all be aware of the India experience, where some companies have offshored to India, coming back to this country. So, you know, there's always benefits around change, and the contact centre has done amazing things. Ian, you picked up on a few key pieces there. The contact centre industry main pillars is based around people and technology. The key thing that's come out from our membership base of whom we contacted and supported way before sent home, because we're talking about large contact centres. In the Northwest, to put that into perspective for you, an average size contact centre in the Northwest would be around 200 to 250 seats. That's your average size within the Northwest. It varies in other parts of the country, but and a lot of those are Manchester based, central Manchester based, quite a few of those. So we were speaking to them long before the lockdown happened about how do we migrate all of these people to their own homes, because of course employee safety and well-being was paramount, and social distancing is a challenge within these centres, as you'll fully appreciate. So the technology part of the contact centre industry has absolutely come into its own on many fronts. That's safeguarding people so they can work at home, and nothing short of what I would describe as strategic miracles have taken place. You know, absolute tangible examples of 200 people being moved to work from home within a week. That would normally take a board and strategic level years to get through. And that proof of concept to trust employees has absolutely been brought to the front and proven very successful. So the technology as a keeping our staff safe is one thing. The other piece that I just wanted to share with you, which has been we've always in the industry been ahead of the curve on what we call channels to service. And, you know, the customer is becoming more sophisticated. They're choosing the channels on which they want to communicate. And what we've seen is that piece that you brought to the table, Ian, in the intro. The patience of the customer has been exemplary. We've got that we're in a particularly sort of different window of time. However, the challenge will be moving forward, where what channel will the customer want to contact the business on moving forward, and will the patience around customer experience still be there? So I don't particularly want to digress too much into what's ahead of us in terms of technology, but just put it out there that there's innovation happening daily around the future customer experience. And there's a lot around as well. How do we engage with our people moving forward? Because we've had, you know, heroic acts of people working from home and doing it really well without impact on attrition and sickness. So that's been a huge plus for the contact centre employees. So what does it look like moving back to the office is the next big question mark. And there's a hell of an opportunity, positive opportunity, to really start to map out where we need to be in terms of what the future back at the office looks like, feels like, you know, before we even get into conducting risk assessments, that whole piece around shift patterns that we're working with people on, the, you know, the split shifts, the social distancing, which you'll appreciate, you know, there's huge work going on.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give more detail as we move through this afternoon, but I think that touches people, engagement, comms around technology have been at the heart of the contact centre in industry. They've been amazing.
Jane, thanks very much. A really great overview and really interesting to learn more about your sector. And I think there'll be lots of questions that will be generated. In fact, just a reminder to everyone who's watching, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the ability to pose questions. Please do, and then we can run through them as we go through this afternoon. I think also, Jane, just what you said about moving people into home working situations really quickly. Funny enough, we at the Good Employment Charter are running a webinar on Thursday this week, exactly around that dynamic, because not every employer has done that properly. Let's think about it. In mid-March, they were thrown a laptop and said, "We'll see you in a month." And in fact, that month has now gone on to where we are now, and it will probably go on for another 6 months. So certainly I've had examples of young people sitting in shared houses on the edge of beds with a laptop on their knee. It's hardly something that's going to be sustainable. So we're going to be discussing that on Wednesday, and I think details will come up at the end of the today's webinar about that one.
And to add to that, Ian, not everybody is comfortable to work at home. It's not
Absolutely.
the ideal.
Absolutely.
You know, there's a lot around that piece. It's okay working from home, and it will suit, you know, many individuals. For others, it won't. So, you know, we do need to look at that.
Adam, I'd like to bring you in. I know there'll be lots of questions potentially around HR issues, particularly, and employment matters, about how employers manage this return to work. But in terms of the guidance that we saw last week, and I'm presuming most people will have at least had a cursory look at it, what's the status of that guidance, Adam? How does it work? Who will enforce it? Because the guidance is actually quite loosely worded in some areas. Can you just give us some clarification, Adam?
Yeah, of course. So just so people know, my name's Adam Pennington. I'm a senior associate solicitor at Stevenson's, and I assist both companies and employees, those companies that are facing litigation before an employment tribunal, and we also assist employees who are looking to bring claims against companies. And what we've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic is that the nature in which certain litigation is being brought forward is changing significantly in certain areas. So when we talk about the enforcement of this guidance, we have to remember at present it is only guidance, so it doesn't necessarily have statutory effect. But the pitfalls for companies is where there isn't compliance. The legislation such as the Equality Act, the Employment Rights Act, that legislation is still in place, and where companies are falling short in terms of this guidance that's been issued that perhaps sets out best practice, if you like, to assist companies with the current COVID-19 situation. It helps them I suppose it serves as a reminder across that legislation as to what their responsibilities are. And so if, for example, you have a member of staff who is shielding and there's an expectation on that member of staff to come back into work, the company needs to bear in mind its responsibilities under the Equality Act and the duty to make reasonable adjustments. We were talking earlier about the trust that we have in employees. I think that's something you mentioned, Jane, and that trust and confidence works both ways. So a company that's eager to bring staff in that is trying to ride roughshod over the guidance, where there is that breakdown in trust and confidence, there is a risk for companies that employees may be looking to resign, alleging that there's been a fundamental breach, if not of their express contractual terms, the implied terms of trust and confidence. Another area which we've noticed coming through more often is the idea of whistleblowing. So a lot of companies have been in contact with us to say, well, this member of staff is concerned about coming back because of X, Y, and Z. And on the face of it, these are whistleblowing concerns. So these are concerns that someone has about their own health and safety or the health and safety of others. And companies need to bear in mind that if anyone on the back of raising those sorts of disclosures is put to a detriment in any way, that employee will be entitled to compensation. So we're drafting far more whistleblowing policies and reminding companies that it doesn't matter if these members of staff have been there for less than 2 years, because ordinarily an unfair dismissal claim can only be brought after 2 years. There are now certain individuals who are making certain noises, quite rightly, and we're just reminding companies to exercise caution in that respect, because if they're seen to be dismissing or putting someone to a detriment because of these concerns that they're raising, claims in that region that the compensation is uncapped. So the enforcement of this, in a sense, comes from the legislation which is already in place, if that makes sense.
Adam, thank you. I'll move. There will be questions for you. I've got them already. I'd like to move and just introduce Dave. Dave, we did talk previously, particularly around risk assessment, and I know CFA have developed a risk assessment template tool, which I'm sure we can point people to. But you also wanted to talk more about business resilience and cybersecurity through these times as well.
Yeah, that's right, Ian. So good afternoon, everybody. So Dave Harrison, Operations Director at Centre for Assessment. We are part of the Growth Company also. So just really, if I start off a little bit of a run through with some of the things to consider as part of the risk assessment. And every employee is duty bound to carry out risk assessment under the Health and Safety at Work Act from back in 1974. And as Ian said in the intro, especially now with COVID-19 and potentially returning back into the workplace, or even if you're already back in the workplace, if you've not done one, you need to do this and just have a look at what's going on. So we've got this template that we've created, which is available as a free download, and the link will be on the slide at the end of the presentation today. So don't worry about trying to grab that. It's there and it is free. What we've done is link to the government website, where there's quite a lot of guidance and things to consider. So do keep ahead of the government advice, and it's probably sound just really to follow that. And one of the things, if we're talking about resilience and business continuity planning, I don't think anyone really saw this pandemic coming, certainly in industry and business, and did much about it at the start. So it wasn't really in the existing risk assessments and business plans that were out there. So in carrying out what I would say pre-start, pre-people going back to work, you need to be considering a number of things, considering what changes to policies you might have, numbers of people that you're going to allow in place. As has already been mentioned, and we're hearing every day on the news, this term social distancing. But practically, what you're going to do in the workplace, things like the kitchen, the toilets and other common areas. And even before people get to work, how can you work with people to assist them with travel to work? Maybe you're looking at avoiding peak times, as we've been advised to avoid public transport. and encourage driving, which kind of goes against the grain a bit. We've been encouraging everybody really to use public transport and not clog the roads up, but here we are doing the opposite in this interesting time. So thinking about other work areas that you've got around, whether that's you've got desks, are they back to back, maximum numbers of people in any particular area at one time, marking out the floors, having the hand washing facilities and cleansing, so whether you've got sanitizer. You might even want to consider some kind of a deep clean and disinfecting areas, and maybe more regular cleaning as things goes on with that regular disinfecting. One of the things where there is potential for people to get in real bother is water systems may have been static for some weeks. So if you've been out of the business for 8 weeks, you'd be wise to flush your systems and possibly test for Legionellas, because that could cause massive problems. Think about changing those workspaces, moving desks around, erecting screens. We've heard lots of people buying the sort of perspex screens or hard copy ones, but basically trying to avoid face-to-face if at all possible to keep the distance. And some examples we've heard of as well is where people have worked together in groups, is keeping those people together in small pods. So, if they do get an instance, then they're not spreading it wider into the workforce. Obviously there could be problems if you do have an instance of COVID-19 and the people that have been exposed to the people who get it. If they're all self-isolating, you may have staffing issues. One of the big things that came up in another session we ran yesterday was around communication and training. Involve your people is absolutely key. We need to win the hearts and minds of people here. And it's only right that they should be involved or consulted with on whatever measures are taken. And they will probably come up with some really good ideas that are helpful and practical as well. People are worried. They need putting at ease. They're looking at us as managers and senior business leaders to lead the way and to tell them it's going to be all right, and to put things in place that's going to help them manage through it. So, where you can, be flexible with them and look after them. It's Mental Health Week. I don't know whether you know that, but, a lot of support going into looking after people's mental well-being as well as the physical one in the workplace. Some people might not be able to attend work. So, they might be vulnerable themselves, or have vulnerable people in their family. Or there might be a parent, and childcare is an issue. So all kind of things that need looking at. Minimizing work meetings, physical meetings, use technology, Teams advertised widely on the telly, Zoom, all of those kind of things. And we've been talking particularly about home working this morning. So you may already have this in place, or you may be considering it going forward. So, how can we do that? How can we consider the link to cyber or information security and data protection? And there will be probably an assessment of that home workplace needed as well. You might want to consider a phased return for certain people in place. Whatever it is your risk assessment comes up with and you put in place, all good things. As I say, do consult, do involve people. And the link back to the government website, there is actually what they call a poster, which is a bit like a self-generated certificate that you can draw down and post in your workplace, and you can show to your customers as well as your employees. So thinking about cyber, which is equally pertinent today in any home working that's going on, as well as anything you're looking at going forward, I would firstly encourage people to think about information security, not just cyber. So we're talking about hard copy documents too. And actually, sound-wise, who's in earshot of any conversations you've got going on at home and may pick up on some sensitive information. So need to sort of risk assess the approaches from an information security point of view of both the physical and online risks. And maybe if as Ian said, people have been chucked a laptop and been told to get on with it, how are they looking after kit? What sort of security measures have we got in around that? One of our colleagues actually was out, not since COVID started, just before, out for the weekend, had a break-in and the work laptop got nicked. So, that causes significant interruption to business. So it does need looking after. And, you may have gone out there and needed to acquire all of a sudden extra laptops, mobile phones, tablets, etc. So lots of things to go in place around the policies and procedures of how to work with those. There are a couple of standards out there like Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001, which will give some people some things to think about. Even if you don't go for the standard, they're well worth a look at and help you identify things that you can put in place. Also, there's another organisation local to us in Manchester, which is the Cyber Resilience Centre down on Oxford Street. Again, there's a link to this organisation. What they put out there are a number of briefs, so some useful information that's popped up just fresh yesterday. Several reports of people believing phones and Wi-Fi has been hacked into, allegedly by neighbours for the purpose of listening into their conversations. So do have secure Wi-Fi, ensure you've got the passwords. Also, websites being taken down and kind of ransomware, blackmail with some kind of nasty things put in there. And another person happened to be an author, not in our field we're talking about today, but having laptops nicked. So sort of issues for them there.
Yeah. Dave, I'll stop you there. That's been great overview, particularly the risk assessment, but also to start minds thinking about business resilience and cyber security and information security through. But we've got some questions coming in I would like to put to you all. Mary has asked one actually, which I think maybe Adam, you might come back with, but anybody who's managing people will be faced with this, I think. So how can a business deal with employees that are uncomfortable about returning to work? Inevitably, people will go, I'm not, getting back on the train, or I don't feel comfortable coming back into the workplace. So what's the legal position around that? But then how do we manage that as well?
Yeah, very difficult. I mean, as you say, some people feel they don't want to go back to work, or they feel unable because they're worried about catching the virus, or they're at risk themselves of picking a virus up. And it's important for each employer on a case-by-case basis to listen to those concerns, because the employer, as Dave was mentioning before, has a duty to everyone, to all of its staff, to ensure that their health and safety and that of its other members of staff aren't compromised. They could, for example, offer some of the examples we've given was extra car parking where possible, so people may be able to avoid using public transport, keep someone on furlough if they're temporarily unable to work, arrange for someone to work different hours temporarily to avoid peak time travel. So there may be ways in which to work with this member of staff to just alleviate their concerns. If they still don't want to go back to work, they may be able to arrange with their employer to take time off as holiday or as unpaid leave. But it's important to bear in mind, you as a manager or as an employer, you don't have to agree to that. If someone still is refusing to attend work without a valid reason, the risk to that employee is then potentially disciplinary action. But that would be as a last resort, having consulted with that member of staff. Just as an example, I myself am a kidney transplant patient, so I'm having to self-isolate for 12 weeks. All I've needed to do is just keep my manager updated with the advice I'm getting from the hospital. He's kept updated, and we just work through it together. But I think it's something that Dave mentioned before, or it may have been Jane, about communication is key, just with the member of staff. But
yeah, I was going to come back to Dave actually, because I think part of that risk assessment process, Dave, is about working with the employees on a kind of co-production of that risk assessment and the steps that then are put in place. Is that right?
Yeah, always the best policy to involve people, technical term, consult, involve, whatever. But if you want to win people's hearts and minds, you need to involve them. And as I said, they're going to come up with lots of good ideas. As managers, as business owners, we don't have the rights on all the good ideas. And it's just best to involve people to get the best solutions.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Jane, Alex, you got any insights?
Yes, I just a few things that have come up on our Friday update call, and we've got about 80 businesses represented on average every week there. What some are doing is that they've created a virtual tour of the actual building. So, and that's worked really well to encourage people to remember what it looks like and how it's changed. And the facilities management teams in the main have done that. The other piece is obviously, as we've already said, is Dave, you articulated this about that whole comms piece. So very strong messages being regularly given of encouragement from CEOs around what their views are, which differ from company to company based on their, their values and their own particular vision. So comms is key, and asking the individuals what they would like to do in the first instance, because a lot of ladies, and I don't want to be gender specific here, but we do by fact have a lot of females working in the contact centre industry, and of course with that goes the childcare issues. So, when you say employees don't want to come back to work, I would suggest it's common sense almost to push back and say who can and wants to come back to work is the best place to positively start, if at all possible. But that virtual tool is working particularly well, and the temperature gauge, the virtual temperature gauge, to give people reassurance is particularly working. That's even before they get into the building, not individual. I'm sure, Alex, you'll be aware of this from mass crowd. If you've got 1,000+ people returning to a building, it's got to be quick and effective. Lots of things out there at the moment to give people that comfort, not just when they walk in the building, but even in breakout rooms and during the day, people's temperatures really being monitored throughout. So a lot of those sort of things are coming to the fore to encourage people to come back.
Thanks, Jane. I think the idea of the virtual tour is fantastic.
Yeah.
I've picked up a tip from a company that's thinking about coming back, but they're already designing it's a kind of reinduction pack for the staff and a reinduction program, so that it's been several months since you've been back in this place, and this is how it works, and this is how it's going to work moving forward. So I think just thinking of those things through, and if it involves a virtual tour, then all in well. I think that's a really great addition to the ideas. Alex, you got anything?
Yeah, they're all really interesting ideas, and we've got a policy of looking at personalised return to work plans. So it's not necessarily practical for all sizes of companies, but making sure that that is co-produced with the person that you are bringing back to work. But then also, if you have a health and safety committee, perhaps you should have a subcommittee that is purely looking at COVID-19 measures and making sure it's truly representative from across your organisation, because and I think I mentioned this to you on a different webinar we were on recently, I'd seen a lot of things come out very, very quickly, guidance which were very, very top down and very from the perspective of the person who wrote it, rather than having anybody else's view put into that. So I would strongly recommend that you take the sting out of anything you haven't seen by making sure your users are front and centre in any of those policy changes, and that yes, you do have another induction process with staff, but also highlight some of the challenges, like I think Dave mentioned earlier. Cityco's offices, we're in a lovely grade 2 listed building. We're in the garret, for anyone who knows. We're up there writing poetry all day long. Quite difficult to get to. It's a very narrow staircase. That's actually a significant challenge for us. So and it's causing some concern. So, we want to hear from our teams how we're going to get around this. And we've got them on board with our plan. We've got halfway towards making something work rather than just imposing it upon them.
Thanks, Alex. I think moving people around the city, whether it be in buildings or commuting in or even around the public spaces, will be a challenge. And we've got a question from Richard about whose responsibility is it to manage the areas of public realm in the city centre in terms of social distancing. Does anyone have an answer to that?
Thanks,
Alex.
Well, it is guidance, as we've said before. Social distancing isn't, as far as I'm aware from my colleagues at GMP, it's not enforceable. It is something that we recommend. So unless it becomes a public order issue, i.e. you are causing somebody else fear, distress, alarm, and you're in their face, then social distancing is the right thing to do, but enforcing it is very, very difficult. So having a space that you go into, whether it's public realm or a private office, where it's very clear what the rules are and how you follow them from the moment you enter, that also enables us to make sure that social distancing is observed. If you are the only one in a space who is not adhering to social distancing, you're probably quite a problematic member of society anyway. So there might be another way of sort of dealing with your behaviours. It's a tough challenge, and we're keeping on top of local authority guidance and National Police Council guidance all the time. But as soon as I know, Richard, you'll be the first to know. Trust me.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult one. As will public transport be.
Yeah.
We understand the capacity, particularly for certain modes of public transport in and around the city, will be severely compromised if we follow social distancing. We've had a question previously about whose responsibility is it for the safety of the journey to work? Is it the employer that should ensure that they've got a safe journey to work, that the employee who's being asked to come back into the city is actually commuting in a safe way? Adam, you got any view on that?
It's an interesting one. There's an obligation where you're commuting if it's during working hours and you're sort of maybe attending another office, for example. But interestingly, there isn't a duty as such as far as the commute is concerned. But whilst that's not a legal obligation, just getting back to this idea of, Dave, you mentioned before, the hearts and minds, building trust and confidence, it's worth bearing in mind an individual employee's needs and concerns. So no legal obligation, but in the interests of, harmonising the workforce, it's worth just perhaps exercising some discretion.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I understand Transport for Greater Manchester have issued some guidance recently to employers and employees on the use of public transport. So if the link isn't at the end of the webinar, we'll make sure that that is publicised. I think we've got time for one more question, and it's an interesting one because it's about any advice for people who have got new offices or co-working spaces. How do we market those sorts of spaces effectively during these times? And I think the whole point you made, Jane, about home working doesn't work for everyone. That's why we've got co-working spaces, because people who could probably run their business from their own home actually want to socialize, engage with other people. That's why there's an upsurge in co-working spaces. So they will be, I think, particularly difficult to manage, because how can we dictate the flows in that sort of building? But interested to hear your views.
If I could just come in on that point, I just think it's the old adage that change brings opportunity, or a chance to look at new facets of your business. And one of the things, and this is Jane Thomas speaking now, but listening to that, is I'd be looking at potentially getting into networks that we're all a part of, and bringing the mix into their future strategic plans. So it might not be an immediate fix, but a lot of the members are using this opportunity to reevaluate their estates, so where they're into long-term leases, and it's really given them the opportunity to look at that leverage of more working from home or in such co-working spaces. So I just think it's bringing people up to speed to maybe consider that could feasibly be a part of the mix. It's as broad and as wide as that, but that's if I owned one of these businesses, that's where I'd be going with it, is that, okay, ideally we want people to come into us, that's our business model, but now potentially we've got to go out and let people know how that could work in the future. It's readjusting, isn't it?
Thanks, Jane. Alex, you must deal with lots of co-working space buildings.
Yeah, I work very closely with lots of places. Actually, we've got a seminar next week with Spinning Fields talking about how the steps that they've taken, and just in relation to their marketing, of course, that's going to now be the emphasis for all of their brochures and their sales technique, which is, this is a safe environment, and we are keeping you and your clients and your visitors safe.
Yeah.
These are the measures. So, it's repositioning yourself as that resilient, responsible, safe place in the city centre that you can rely on. You won't, if you're going into a new lease, then this is where you're going to be. It's people who've been in a lease for 25 years and are having difficulty with the landlords or feel that they're not confident. They're the guys that I think are really going to struggle to get changes. They feel they are on the back foot, but new spaces. And I have to say, most of the people I've spoken to have got some pretty high tech solutions in place already. They're mapping and they're modelling. They're using AI to show where the pinch points might be, and it really inspires confidence actually.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. In fact, thank you all for your contributions today. We're just about out of time. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. I think we've had some interesting questions put to us too. There's a number of resources that I'm sure all of you have on your various websites, and we'll be able to promote those after the event. This is one of a series of webinars that the Growth Company and Business Growth Hub are running, and please look at the website for further information about all the support that you can get on seeing us through the coronavirus pandemic, but also the future webinars. There is also, as I said, our webinar from the Good Employment Charter. We've also got stuff there on cybersecurity and the TFGM business guidance. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Adam. It's been a really useful 45 minutes, and I hope everyone's enjoyed and learned something from it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Enjoy your day.
I know.
Bye-bye.